Hello, everyone across the country. I'm Tim Phillips, president of Americans for Prosperity. This is another in our continuing series of Facebook discussions about the disastrous spending and big government top-down liberalism coming out of Washington, D.C. from President Biden, Speaker Pelosi, and also Leader Chuck Schumer. I'm coming to you on the road once again, this time from Nevada. We're doing a big infrastructure event or event against this infrastructure spending. We know it's a hashtag on the infrastructure, by the way. We're doing a big event here urging Senator Cortez Masto and these two Las Vegas area House Democrats to do the right thing, to put the country before their party and stand up and say, hey, look, we can't do all this spending, all the Green New Deal, all of this big union PRO-Act stuff, all of the Bernie Sanders Medicare for all that the party leadership wants to do. We're joined by a very special guest, a key leader. He's the whip of the Republicans in the House of Representatives, Steve Scalise from the 1st District of Louisiana. Whip Scalise, thank you for what you're doing. Give us an update from the front lines in the Capitol on where all of this stands right now.
Well, thanks, Tim. It's great to be with you and really appreciate working with Americans for Prosperity. It's been a long time relationship, but especially right now, what you're doing out on the road, going to these districts, especially Democrat districts where they're thinking of voting for this massive $5.5 trillion tax and spend bill masquerading as an infrastructure package. It's important that we defeat the whole thing because this would do long-term damage to our country. So if you look at it, Tim, right now, this week especially, is part of this epic battle that has been playing out in Washington between free market capitalism versus big government socialism. That is the battle that the Biden agenda has been trying to push. They're trying to crush capitalism in America, and they're trying to promote this big government socialism. And I think the public's pushing back, not just in Republican districts, but you're seeing it in swing districts, Democrat districts across the country.
Yeah, I think you're right. They were saying they were gonna have key votes this week. We've got a lot going on. Let's unpack a little bit of it. First, there's this continuing resolution that funds the government for the coming fiscal year. There's never a regular order budget anymore, which is, frankly, not good for the country. There needs to be regular order budget. So we've got that out there. We've got the debt limit movement bumped up. And then now we've got this really, really big spending bill that we've been talking about. Give us a sense, if you would, in a snapshot of where you think things stand. And is your Republican caucus, you're the whip, the second ranking leader, a key person there. By the way, we've watched your work and known you for years. Give us a sense of where your party is, and is it united on these three key moving parts?
Yeah, Tim, a lot of big issues are coming to a head this week. Today's, a big day because Pelosi keeps promising her more liberal members, and by the way, when they try to project them as moderates, there are no moderate Democrats right now. You can just look at the voting records. It's moderates, it's liberals in moderate districts versus socialists. And the socialists have been driving the agenda and winning. But this week, you've got the government funding expiring on September 30th. It's the end of the fiscal year. It's always this day. And yet Pelosi has drug it out to the very last minute. I think we're going to see a short-term bill pass to at least take that issue off the table. There's some other things that expire. The surface transportation bill, they're trying to make that a pawn in this hostage game with infrastructure. Again, House Republicans would be happy to work with them on infrastructure. They've yet to work with us at all or reach out. But the real big package is the $5.5 trillion spending package. Pelosi wants to bring it to the floor this week, but Tim, she does not have the votes because people across the country, people like you that are alerting people are paying attention to what's going on in Washington, and they're alarmed with this push to big government socialism. They don't want it. They know it's driving inflation. And so we've been uniting our members. I've whipped against this whole package because it's sold as a package by Pelosi. It's sold as a package by Biden. They are holding infrastructure hostage to all the other madness, the massive taxes, massive spending that would be at record level numbers. $5.5 trillion. I mean, you know what that number means. It would be devastating to middle-class families. When they say nobody making under 400,000 will pay more in taxes, that's a lie. Just look at their natural gas tax in the bill. Anybody who uses natural gas to heat their home, cool their home in a winter or summer, they're going to be paying more, probably 14% more on their electricity bills. That's not a millionaire or billionaire's tax. That's something that would hit low income families the hardest. That's in their bill.
Yeah, I can tell you out on the road that so many of the activists coming to our event. By the way, we have now done 825 or so events urging votes against this package, this legislation in Washington. We've done them in Republican districts, sometimes with Republican members. We were Scott Perry in the Harrisburg, Pennsylvania area just a couple of weeks ago. Big crowd of fired up activists. And we do these in Democrat districts, like here in Las Vegas tonight, and also just a couple of weeks ago in Cindy Axne's district in Des Moines. But ladies and gentlemen, our Whip Scalise, the thing I find the most that's driving people is the inflation. We're looking at now $6 for a pound of hamburger meat in a lot of places, over $4 sometimes for milk, gasoline prices. Give us a sense of why inflation is going through the roof on a consistent basis throughout this year.
Yeah, inflation has mushroomed under President Biden, primarily because of the massive spending and the radical policies. And if you think about it, just look at gasoline. Tim, people are paying over 40% more for gasoline. What did Joe Biden do on day one as president? He killed the Keystone Pipeline, a great partnership between Canada and the United States for American energy. He's been waging a war on American energy, but it's not because he's against all fossil fuels. He just turned around a few weeks ago and begged OPEC and Russia to produce more oil while he's blocking America from producing more oil. Well, we were energy independent under President Trump. He has crushed that to the point where now he's begging adversaries of ours to make more oil. That kills American jobs. Those are blue collar jobs, by the way, that Joe Biden killed. Those were union jobs in the Keystone Pipeline. Places like Pennsylvania, talked about Scott Perry. I've been to Harrisburg with him. Those blue collar workers in Harrisburg, they love President Trump because Trump was fighting for those blue collar workers. President Biden has turned his back on them, and that has led to higher inflation. You're paying more at the grocery store because of all the massive spending. When the government is paying people more money not to work than to work, that means there's fewer people. The supply chain's broken down. If you want to buy a microwave oven for your kitchen, you're probably waiting 6 months for it, and you're paying 30% more because the government's paying people more money to sit at home. That's billions and billions of dollars of debt from countries like China to pay people not to work. That money wasn't in a piggy bank. So I think people are seeing this. They've gotten the fact, they made the link that the spending in Washington that's out of control under President Biden is the reason they're seeing inflation. And if you add another $5.5 trillion of new taxes and spending, you will get even higher inflation. People are fed up. They've had enough.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen watching, over 2 million of you, 2 million Americans have taken action with Americans for Prosperity since the springtime, urging their two United States senators and their House member to vote no on all this spending, all the Green New Deal, all the tax increases. If you haven't done that, just click that link, the I Volunteer link. It's right there in the thread here on Facebook. Take a moment to make your voice heard. It's a big moment for the country. Whip Scalise is detailing what's in this legislation, all the spending, what it's going to do to our nation, all the tax increases. Make sure that someday, hopefully when we've defeated this and gotten back on the right track as a nation, you can say, I did my part. At a key moment, I got involved. I made my voice heard. And Whip Scalise, you talk to more members every day in Congress and probably anyone, given your role. Give folks watching a sense of why it matters when they reach out and talk to their member of Congress, even if their member is voting the right way. Maybe they're encouraging them, or maybe their member is on the other side of this legislation. Tell folks why it's still important either way to make their voices heard to their members of Congress.
Yeah, Tim, engagement from people back home has never been more important. And frankly, it's never made more of a difference. You're seeing right now, Speaker Pelosi has wanted to bring this package of bills to raise your taxes and spend trillions of dollars to the floor. She's been wanting to bring it to the floor for weeks, but she doesn't have the votes. Why? She's in the majority. They run things, except there's only a 4-seat majority. Right now, there are more than 4 Democrats that have expressed opposition to it. Not because they don't want to spend all this money, because they're hearing from people back home. There's probably 25 Democrats in swing districts, and they're hearing from people that aren't just conservatives. Moderates are calling them going, enough already. Even liberals are saying, wait a minute, we don't want big government socialism. And so those calls are making a difference. and are holding the votes back. Pelosi is beating the daylights out of people trying to get them to switch and vote against the interests of their districts, but they haven't done it yet. And so, yeah, call your Republicans who are supporting this effort to defeat it. Keep them strong, keep them vocal. Speaking the truth about what this bill will do has never been more important. But if you've got a Democrat who represents you and you think, well, what does it matter if I call? It matters a lot right now, because mentioning how much you're fed up with the inflation and how much damage it'll do to our country if you raise inflation through higher spending, higher taxes. Look, if they get their way in this bill, America will have a higher corporate tax rate than the Chinese Communist Party. China will have a lower tax rate than America. That would be devastating to middle income jobs. It's not the millionaires and the billionaires that will hurt. It's the blue collar workers, the middle class of America that we were rebuilding. That will go away. Make your calls today. It's making a difference here in Washington.
And it's a key moment. You mentioned that Speaker Pelosi had hoped to bring this legislation to the floor, the 5 trillion plus. It's now delayed. So folks watching, you are making a difference. You're slowing the momentum down. I don't think they've had any momentum, but you're slowing the movement down. And so it is a big moment. Make sure you make your voice heard. So Whip Scalise, we've talked about some of the Green New Deal provisions, the massive spending. We've talked about a little bit of the tax stuff in it. Give us a sense of the Medicare for All, the expansion of Obamacare that's also in this package, if you would.
Yeah, there are a number of provisions in this package that would widen the Obamacare reach, the Medicare for All. They've always wanted a government-run healthcare system. Even when they passed Obamacare, they didn't get all of the pieces of it they wanted, so they keep coming back. And in this bill, they do a number of things. They're trying to have government price fixing for drug prices. It's a bill called HR 3 that they tried to pass. We had defeated it at one point in this debate because 3 Democrats voted with us against it, because they know it would take probably 40% of all the life-saving drugs in America that are available would no longer be available in America, because in countries where the government fixes prices, you can't get a lot of the drugs that save people's lives. And so that would happen in America. And so we've asked them, which life-saving drugs do you not want available to Americans? They won't answer the question, but they know it's a sensitive issue. They're trying to jam it into this bill. It's in there right now, by the way. So that would be one of the many things devastating. They put more subsidies for Obamacare to take people off of private insurance. It's no longer about making sure everybody's insured. It's now trying to take people out of the private insurance marketplace and put them on government-run healthcare. Most Americans don't want it. Most Americans who have health insurance through their employer like that insurance.
Right.
But they're trying to force you off of that into a government-run healthcare system. It's in their bill. So that's one of the many bad provisions. You mentioned the Green New Deal, trying to kill American energy. But by the way, they exempt China. China emits more carbon than any other country. And yet China gets a gift in this bill. I mean, the Chinese Chamber of Commerce could not have written a better bill where you shut down manufacturing in America and you give those jobs to China. That's nuts. Yet that's in their bill.
Yeah. We did a big event just a few weeks ago in Lubbock, Texas, right on the northern edge of that Permian Basin, Steve. And I was struck by how many Texans walked up to me that day and said, look, we have worked so hard. We've innovated. We've expanded American energy production. We're number 1 in the world. It's lowered energy costs for individual Americans, for businesses, and we've lowered emissions for our country on the CO2 front. Please don't let these guys kill American energy. But yet, that's really, we're not exaggerating to say that the folks on the left, they literally want to kill oil and natural gas, and we can't let them do it here in the United States. It'll be devastating, not just for energy jobs, which is bad enough, but for individual Americans who need that utility bill to be lower every month. For that truck driver who needs to be able to make a living without paying so much for gasoline. There's real world consequences here, Steve.
Yeah, Tim, and this Green New Deal has become like this twisted religion for the far left socialists. They just want it, even though they know it's bad for America. So then they try to say, if there's ever a hurricane or a tornado or a wildfire, it's only because of climate change, when that's not true. We've had worse times. The Mother Nature, the temperature of the earth goes up and down. Thousands of years ago, it was warmer. But ultimately, what they would do would devastate American manufacturing, which is blue collar workers. And it's not that they would get rid of it everywhere. They would just get rid of it in America. They do the things like the Paris Accord. Well, guess what? Read the Paris Accord. It exempts China. And these people love bashing America. But America, as you pointed out, Tim, has been reducing carbon emissions through innovation. You know, we were dominant in energy under Trump. We were exporting energy to our friends around the world. We're no longer able to do that anymore because Biden comes in and he cuts off production of energy on federal lands. He kills the Keystone Pipeline. But it's not like he's against all pipelines. He gave Russia the green light to build their pipeline to Germany. So he was for Russian energy jobs and against American energy jobs. It makes no sense. But that's where the left is. They want to act like every job, you know, if you're making energy, whether it's oil, natural gas, coal, nuclear power, it can all be replaced by wind and solar. I'm for all of the above, Tim. I'm for wind, I'm for solar, but they're not going to meet the needs of an industrialized economy. You need fossil fuels as well. And Biden recognized that because he begged OPEC to produce more oil. Well, guess what? If we're importing oil from Saudi Arabia, they emit more carbon and make the same oil than we do in America because we have higher standards. Stop beating up on America. Start recognizing that America does it better than anywhere. If you want to reduce carbon emissions around the world, make more things in America. Move those jobs from China back to America. Don't run jobs out of America to China. It's sick, psychotic, twisted religious beliefs that they have with this Green New Deal.
One last element of this $5.5 trillion spending and social welfare and top-down government push that we haven't mentioned, but it's in the legislation that I want to ask you to touch on. And that's some of the big union power grabs. Some elements of this so-called PRO Act, which was passed by the House earlier this year. Speaker Pelosi pushed it through, I think, without even any committee hearings. I know the unions are pushing. They're being very public about saying, hey, we want our chunk of this PRO Act in this big spending bill at the end of the year. Can you let folks know a little bit about what is happening on that front? Because that's big too.
Yeah, people ought to be really concerned if they believe in pure merit shops. A lot of states have right to work laws where, you know, go out and compete. The best company wins. Don't force a union shop to be able to get a contract just because they're unionized. So in this bill, they do more of those kind of things like the PRO Act. So take, for example, all of their electric vehicle incentives. So they give billions of dollars in incentives to buy electric cars. Again, I have nothing against electric cars. Let them go compete with fossil fuel cars. But not only do they say you get incentives if you buy an electric car, you only get the incentive if the electric car was built by union workers. So if it's a car company that builds with non-union workers, you don't get the federal incentive. You only get it if it's built by union workers. Imagine all the industries where you really don't have a union presence. You literally shut those companies down. This is just a twisted Washington knows best, one size fits all. We're going to make you do what we want you to do kind of approach. That is big government socialism. And again, they don't believe in free market capitalism. They want to crush free market capitalism. It's why they want a higher tax rate than China. That's what they're trying to do, is to change America fundamentally. We can't let that happen.
Yeah. There are so many issues out there. We were talking about a number of them before we launched this Facebook show. But I would argue, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, that in the next 2 to 3 months, the biggest thing, the most important thing we can do to protect freedom and prosperity in this country is defeat this spending package that you and I have been discussing. There are so many issues, and there are a lot of important ones. And I don't ever want to give short shrift to any of those. But sometimes the battle right in front of you is the one you really got to make sure you're laser beamed on it. Is it an exaggeration, or is it fair to say this is the biggest policy battle over these next couple of months that we can possibly wage for the future of freedom and prosperity in this country?
And this is one of the most epic battles I've seen that will define what America looks like for generations. Because, you know, Ronald Reagan said it best: the closest thing to eternal life is a federal program. In this bill, they create many, many new federal programs, spending trillions of dollars to addict more people to big government. It comes at a cost, and it's a very deep cost. And as we've seen in the past, if they create those programs, they're very hard to get rid of, because just like they have the House, Senate, and White House, you would need all of those levers of power to undo it, and it's still hard to undo. So let's stop it before it even starts. That's the best thing we can do right now. That's why what you're doing with Americans for Prosperity, going around the country, going to districts that are represented by Democrats who are being threatened by Pelosi to vote for this, but they will be voting against the best interest of the people in these districts. People that believe in hard work, people that believe in free market capitalism, all of that is at stake this week in what they're trying to do to transform America. Let's all stand up, make phone calls, urge your members of Congress to oppose this big government, multi-trillion-dollar package of taxes and spending.
Well said. Folks watching, it's a big moment. This week is big. If you haven't clicked that I volunteer link, make sure you do it. Take a moment. It takes about a minute and a half to reach out, make your voice heard to your 2 United States senators and to your House member. Both legislative chambers are in play on this piece of legislation. They're both in play. You've heard Whip Scalise say that. Well, Steve, I've known you for a long time. I've watched your work and your efforts. We've discussed some of the big challenges facing our country, some of the big threats, frankly, on the policy end facing our country. I also know you're an incredibly hopeful person, someone who's optimistic about the future of this country. Close us out by giving us a sense of the reason for your optimism about where we're going as a nation, despite some of the really big challenges we've got right now.
Look, I'm very optimistic because I'm seeing people across the country stand up against this. In 2010, we had the Tea Party movement, and a lot of people in Washington didn't understand it. They underestimated it because they don't think people back home are paying attention. It's their only hope for big government socialism is if people look the other way. People are not looking the other way right now, Tim. You're alerting people. So many people are following what's going on. They're not going to get it from the mainstream media, but they're figuring it out in other ways. Look, there was a vote on the House floor a few weeks ago. Maxine Waters was trying desperately to keep this moratorium on evictions because they don't want people to have to pay their rent. All this idea of like free everything, free college, free rent. There's no such thing as a free lunch. You know that. Most people innately know that. But they were trying to say you don't have to pay your rent and it won't have a consequence. They could not get the votes to pass that bill. And Maxine Waters was trying frantically to get the votes. We held our members back, but there were some Democrats who are feeling the pressure from people back home. And ultimately, enough of them stuck with us and the bill failed. That is a huge win, but it shows you people having a voice, people expressing their voice is having an impact, and it's putting an end to some of this madness up here. They're hitting a wall on all of this big government socialism, but they're not quitting. They're going to keep trying. But if we keep pushing back, we can defeat the big government socialist push.
Well said. Well, folks, out on the road, I'm Tim Phillips. We're going to do a big event in Las Vegas tonight. We'll be in Des Moines and Cedar Rapids, Iowa tomorrow. And then on Monday, we'll be in the Dallas-Fort Worth suburbs. Colin Allred, a Democrat who's in a swing moderate district. He ought to know better, but he's been pushing this legislation. We're going to be urging him to change his ways. It's a big moment for the country. Do your part, folks. Whip, Steve Scalise, thank you for what you're doing. And we'll sign off for now. Thank you all very much.
God bless you, Tim. Thanks.
Thanks.